You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, Trump was nearly kicked out of court today. What happened in the E. Jean Carroll case?
Trump cannot behave himself, cannot contain himself. I would say he acts like a child, but that would be an insult to children because
Yeah.
generally, if a person in a position of authority tells a child to be quiet and follow the rules, children can and do. Donald Trump can't and won't. And there was outburst after outburst. There was him mumbling things under his breath, but such that the jury could hear it. And, it got very contentious in there. And the Judge Kaplan, ultimately said, basically, keep it up, you're out. And judges do have broad discretion to control their courtroom, including ordering a defendant in a criminal case or a defendant in a civil case, like the E. Jean Carroll case, to be banned from the courtroom because they've been disruptive. They've been put on notice by the judge that if you continue to disrupt the proceedings, I will order you removed. That warning is kind of a necessary condition precedent to kicking a defendant out of his own case, but it has been done. It can be done. And tomorrow is a new day. And if Donald Trump keeps it up, keep an eye on Judge Kaplan.
There was plenty of reporting about fireworks going off between Alina Habba, Trump's attorney, and Judge Kaplan as well. Is it unusual that things would get so hostile between an attorney and the judge?
Great question. Actually, the answer is no. I have seen so many attorneys, frankly, both defense attorneys and prosecutors, sort of push the envelope a little bit too far with the judge. Attorneys know what the rules of evidence require. They know what the rules of the decorum of the court require, but some of them can't help themselves. They push and they push, and the judges will push back. So it's not all that unusual. I've seen defense attorneys do it a little bit more than prosecutors, but I've seen some of my own fellow prosecutors act in ways that I thought were inappropriate to the setting, whether a criminal trial or a civil case. And so it's really not all that unusual. But here's the thing, Brian. Usually, once the judge puts the parties, the attorneys, on notice of the do's and don'ts of the decorum in that judge's courtroom, because every judge runs their courtroom a little bit differently, usually the attorneys fall in line because there is no upside to angering or antagonizing a judge. And it sounds like Alina Habba angered and antagonized the judge.
Well, to that exact point of there being no upside, is it going to be Judge Kaplan alone who's going to determine the damages in this case?
No, this is a jury trial. So it's really
Okay.
kind of it's in an interesting posture. The jury was impaneled, 9 jurors, to decide only the question of damages. How much should Donald Trump be made to pay for his continued defamation of E. Jean Carroll, even after the first jury concluded that he defamed E. Jean Carroll? I mean, how much do you think it will take to stop Donald Trump from running his mouth and lying about his perceived enemies like E. Jean Carroll? I think the sky's the limit. The first jury awarded E. Jean Carroll $5 million for battery and defamation. This jury, seeing what Donald Trump continues to do, the way he's acting like a juvenile in court, the way he continues to post things on social media that are, defamatory or maybe defamatory -1 during the course of this very trial. Donald Trump is forever bragging and boasting about being a billionaire. That's not going to be lost on this jury. When it comes to the damages this jury may award, I think the sky's the limit. 5 million, that is well in the rear view mirror. Could it be 10 million? Could it be 25, 50 million? Could it be half a billion? I'm telling you, when you see just how obstinate Donald Trump is and how he doubles down and triples down on his lies and defamation about E. Jean Carroll, I'm looking for a really big number out of this jury.
Is it possible that E. Jean Carroll can just keep suing Donald Trump for, for ever increasing sums so long as he continues to make these defamatory claims?
Endlessly. You know, There is no, stopping point where all of a sudden Donald Trump continues to lie about E. Jean Carroll, continues to defame and damage E. Jean Carroll. And because she's won two hefty jury awards against him, somehow he can't be sued again for defamation. That would kind of make a mockery of the entire process. He keeps defaming E. Jean Carroll. She can keep suing him. She can sue him back to the Stone Age, take every penny he's got ultimately. And it looks like she is well on her way.
And we had just spoken about how it's the jury, not the judge, who's going to decide the monetary damages in this case. Does it usually play not so well if we see so much hostility between Trump's lawyer, for example, and the judge? Like, is this ultimately going to not redound to the Trump team's benefit to see so much hostility?
Yeah, Brian, jurors pay attention to everything that goes on in the courtroom. And let me tell you what the usual phenomenon is. Judges typically treat the jurors extremely well. They feel a responsibility. They have 12 members of the public, if it's a criminal case, or in this civil case, there are 9 jurors, members of the public, who are required to be in that courtroom 8 hours a day. Judges bend over backwards to make sure that the jurors feel like they're being respected, like they're being treated with courtesy by everyone in the courtroom. And generally, if you want to look at this thing like a popularity contest, the judge is ordinarily the most popular person in the eyes of the jury. And every time the judge says something or does something that communicates displeasure with one attorney or the other, the attorney for Trump or the attorney for E. Jean Carroll, believe me, Brian, the jurors will absorb that and they can't help but be impacted by it. I'm not going to say that they're going to rely on that kind of information primarily to make their decision about money damages. They're
Right.
not. But, usually if a judge is displeased with a party, one of the lawyers, the jurors pick up on it and they kind of file it away. And I believe it can't help but impact kind of the prism through which they see the entire case.
Can Donald Trump appeal these judgments, including this initial $5 million judgment? And if he does, are the monetary awards stayed pending the results of the appeal?
Oh, he can and will appeal. I think he will appeal every single judgment against him, whether civil or criminal, as all of his many cases go to court and come to fruition. With respect to the money judgment, let me first say I was a criminal prosecutor my whole life, not a civil litigator, but let me give you my understanding of what happens to money judgments that have been ordered or awarded by the jury once the loser appeals the case. I think that the courts have some discretion whether to stay the execution of the money judgment. In other words, once an appeal has been filed, the courts have some leeway to say, okay, we're going to maintain the status quo. We're going to basically issue a stay such that Trump doesn't have to pay all the money immediately. But generally what they will do, the courts will order some kind of a money bond be put up by Donald Trump, just so if he loses the appeal, there's going to be a pot of money there that can be paid out, that
It's basically a guarantee.
can be used to satisfy or guarantee that E. Jean Carroll gets her money. But here's the other thing, Brian, and I can't swear to this, but my sense is the courts don't have to stay the execution of the money award. In other words, the judges could say, you know what? You have gone to the defamation well so many times. You go ahead and run your appeal, Donald, but you are going to start paying E. Jean Carroll what the jury awarded her right now.
Now, what is the timeline for the remainder of this case, and how much time should we expect to see before the jury does land on a number that Donald Trump will have to pay?
So Judge Kaplan told the jurors that he expected the trial would take 3 to 5 days, not all that long. Usually, if a trial lasts a week, you can expect jurors to deliberate. There really is no hard and fast rule. I've had juries deliberate 45 minutes and return a verdict. I had a jury deliberate a month after a lengthy trial before beginning to deliver verdicts. I would suspect you're going to see verdicts delivered in a day or two, given that the trial is expected to last 3 to 5 days.
Okay. And now, Glenn, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the political implications of this.
I wanted to ask you, Brian, because when I saw this really, or I saw the reporting of this really heated exchange where Judge Kaplan was threatening to remove, to ban Donald Trump from the courtroom, right? Just kick him out of his own trial. Donald Trump actually threw up his hands and said, I would love that. I mean, looking at it through your political expertise, what do you think is going on there?
This is one of those rare instances where Donald Trump actually tells the truth, but I think it was by accident. Of course, he would love it because the whole point of what Donald Trump is doing right now is that he's trafficking in victimhood. He's presenting himself as if he's the victim, which is especially ironic because this is a case. This specific case is one in which he was found liable for sexually abusing the woman who he's standing across from in the courtroom. And so the notion that Donald Trump is the victim here in a case where he defamed E Jean Carroll, not just once, but numerous times to the point where she's mounting several defamation lawsuits, one after the next, is just absurd on its face. But this is what Donald Trump brings into his campaign. This is like part of his entire campaign for presidency. He's presenting himself as the victim at the hands of the evil communist Marxist Democrats, and that everything that's being done to him is being done unfairly. And that's how he can kind of bring his supporters into the fold to make them feel like we're all the victims. You're all in this together with me. If they can do this to me, they can do it to you. And he needs that because that's the only way that he's going to get anybody to feel any sympathy for him, because in reality, I mean, look what he's done. He is facing 91 criminal charges, two cases of which are at the hands of a DOJ that has a high conviction rate. Another one is, that he in Georgia, where he was leading a criminal enterprise in a giant racketeering scheme. Another one was in the Manhattan DA case. It couldn't be any clearer the extent to which Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man, and yet he needs some way to present himself as the victim in all of this. And so that's what he's doing right now. And so if the judge did him the service of kicking him out of the courtroom like he's trying to be, that would just play into this narrative that, in fact, Donald Trump is the one who's the victim at the hands of a system that just wants nothing more than to unfairly prosecute him. When, as we all know, all of these prosecutions are absolutely warranted. In fact, not only warranted, but long past due.
So I guess we could expect that if Judge Kaplan ultimately grows tired of Donald Trump's antics and kicks him out of his own trial, how long before we would see a fundraising email that the unfair judge and the deep state won't even let me defend myself at trial? They kicked me out of the courtroom. Please send me money.
Glenn, there is the speed of light, but just incrementally quicker than the speed of light is the speed with which Donald Trump will send that fundraising email out. If it's not already written, if someone is not standing there behind a computer with his or her finger hovering over the send button right now, I would be floored. So with that said, we will obviously stay on top of this trial as soon as we have any updates. And like Glenn said, it'll be a quick resolution here. So if you want to follow along to see what those damages are ultimately going to be, make sure to subscribe to these channels. The links are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Taylor Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.